A Tale of Two Kimbers by Nutnfancy. Welcome to my tabletop review of two outstanding 1911 45 ACP pistols, again by Kimber. If I were to go out and buy a premium 1911, Kimber would be the brand. I just trust Kimber. I trust their manufacturing tolerances, their quality control, their design, their attention to detail in the design. It just results in a very accurate and reliable 1911. Now, philosophically speaking, Nutnfancy is not a huge fan of the 1911. I think it's an old-fashioned design that's dated. It's a single action only, has a, like I've talked about in previous videos, has a manual of arms. It's just a little bit more complex than today's more modern designs. Now, that doesn't mean that I and you cannot adapt to this design readily and learn it and be very, very good at it. I'm just saying that for weight and other considerations I'll cover in this review, that I think a 1911 is a good design, but has been pretty much superseded by modern pistol manufacturing, which offers better designs. But this gun is popular. The 1911 remains hugely popular with all kinds of shooters, both law enforcement, military, civilian shooters. They just prefer the flatness, i.e. the width of a 1911, the consistent and light trigger, which aids them in shooting it accurately and quickly. I'm on board with all that. And if you shoot a 1911 the best, you should be carrying a 1911. And that's why I'm making this video, because I want to give you officers, law enforcement officers, maybe some military members who have the leeway, and or civilians, more options for a carry. And I would definitely consider Kimber at the top of your list. Now, that being said, you've got to understand something. These are expensive pistols. They're not cheap. We're talking along the lines of SIG. You know I'm a big SIG fan. I've talked about it in my 5-part review series of that. Man, did I go on and on for the SIG. The Kimbers are along the same lines. It's just a 1911. But their quality and their range of features is outstanding, as you'll see as I continue. What models are these, you're probably asking? Well, at the top I've got the Pro TLE II LG. LG stands for Crimson Trace laser grips. And then this one on the bottom is a Pro Carry II. Yeah, they're expensive, but you know what? They're worth it. These are just top-notch 1911s. And again, if I was considering a carry pistol, this would be at the top of my list. Now, what I'm showing you are these Pro Carries in a 4-inch barrel. Kimber offers a variety of models ranging from a 3-inch barrel to a 4-inch barrel to, like, this is not a Kimber, this is a Taurus, but to a 5-inch barrel. This is a standard full-size 1911. And by way of comparison, this is what we're talking barrel length-wise. You can see that on the right, the 4-inch barrel is a little bit smaller, a little more concealable, a little lighter. However, anytime we shorten the barrel, we also shorten this distance, the sight radius. And that sight radius, the longer we can keep that, the better. It's kind of like my concept of a heavy survival blade in the wilderness. If you can pack it in, you're going to be glad you have it. Same goes for a shooting scenario, defensively, or if you're an officer, offensively. That's, heck, civilian, armed civilian for that matter, just depends on what's going on. But the longer we can make that sight radius, generally the easier the gun will be to shoot accurately. I know different shooters have different ways of shooting, but that's generally how Nutnfancy sees it. So let's talk to the specifics of these models. There's so much to talk about. I'll weave a little philosophy in as I go to make it more interesting, maybe educate as we go as well. Again, these are my own takes. Your mileage may vary. I respect that. But it is just a data point from Nutnfancy and might help you in your search for the right 1911. I'm going to start with that top pistol, that olive drab stocked TLE II. Let's talk about, and I don't have my talking points with me, I apologize for that. Generally I like to go down the list of talking points as you've seen me do, and I hit all the attributes comparing it against other designs. I'm not going to compare this gun against the Glock 17 9mm. At least not that particular gun. I will speak to the differences in design with the 1911 versus other more modern designs, perhaps as I go. First, let's talk about weight, and it's not good. This is a stainless steel version or framed version of the Pro TLE. So it's going to weigh at about 35 ounces, which basically sucks. And the reason I say it sucks is because the magazine only holds, and I'm kind of jumping ahead to firepower, but the magazine's 7+1. So 7 in the magazine, 1 in the chamber. By the way, this gun was clearance checked, and we'll just check it again. Nutnfancy always checks those guns, make sure they're good. Anywho, it's a heavy gun. 35 ounces is not light. You'll have to decide if that's light enough for you to carry in your intended application day in, day out. In my experience, most people who opt for a 1911 for concealed carry, and I'm talking about civilians here, start leaving it at home. They'll carry it for about 3 months dutifully, and then pretty soon they stop carrying it. They don't like it because it's too flippin' heavy. In my opinion, this gun is too heavy for a concealed carry gun. It just is. Now, the aluminum frame version, the Pro Carry II, will save you 7 ounces. This is a 28 ounce gun, also safety check. I won't go through and waste video time doing it. So it's 28 ounces. Now, by way of reference, that is the same weight as a SIG P226, a little bit lighter. But my point is a 1911 is generally not a lightweight design, even with a 4-inch barrel like we're looking at here. It's a chunk of steel. So most other designs can beat it. And I'm talking about, let's say, the Ruger SR9, the SIG designs are even lighter still, especially if you go with a single stack SIG. The Glock versions are definitely lighter. Probably around the mid 20 ounce range, even in 45 caliber. So the Glock 36, which is the single stack Glock, weighs around that. So it is going to be lighter. Now that being said, the weight on the Pro Carry II, the aluminum frame version you're looking at now, feels a lot lighter than 28 ounces. When I hold this gun, it feels light in hand. Now you'd say, why do they make it in 2 different frames? Why don't they just come out with 1 frame? Well, they want to give you options, and some shooters like the weight of a steel frame in the 45 ACP caliber. That's because the 45 just recoils a lot, and if you have a steel framed version, that will generally recoil a lot better. You'll get back on target quicker than you will with an aluminum frame version. By the way, they're both extremely durable. Jumping ahead to durability, but their 70, 75 aluminum frame versions are extremely durable. Kimber tells us they'll last 20,000 rounds, easy. But they've proven that the aluminum frame 1911s basically give nothing up to their steel frame counterparts. And I am inclined to believe that. I think the metallurgy of aluminum is so good these days that I don't doubt that. Now, back in the early 80s, I think there was an issue with aluminum frame guns, and they had to square that away. But those issues, I think, are pretty much evaporated. So, again, we get to the mobility versus firepower argument. Do I go steel or do I go aluminum? This is going to give you quicker follow-up shots. No more durability, but just easier to shoot in the caliber. This is going to be lighter weight to carry. How do I side? Do you even have to ask? I always side with mobility. I like mobility better. I will practice and get good at shooting the lighter weight 1911 for me being able to save 7 ounces. And keep in mind, 7 ounces is a rather large tactical folding knife. That's the weight difference we're talking here. That's a substantial weight. Don't think that's nothing, because it is. It's something. So that's that. So I would opt for the aluminum frame Pro Carry II if it were me. If I knew that I was indeed going to carry it in a holster, if I was a competitor at shooting my 1911 all the time and not in a carry a lot, shoot little scenario, I would opt for a steel framed 1911. For a recreation gun, IPSC, anything, I think you're really smart to go with a steel frame 1911. Pretty much all other reasons, I will go with this model, this style of 1911. So, a lot can be said about the weight. I'll just leave it at that. They are heavier than competing designs, but Kimber's done a good job giving us an option for that aluminum frame. I'm going to try to keep this in 10-minute segments. That's part one of Nutnfancy's review of the Pro Carry 1911s. Tune in for part two.